Well, howdy. My name is Sanjay. I'm a UI UX designer and developer based out of Franklinton, North Carolina. In this video, I'm going to be talking all about how to add JavaScript to your child theme. Now, if you haven't already, definitely check out the other videos in this series for how to spin up a local environment for WordPress and how to create a child theme. All right, so here we are again in our groovy new site. Now, before we start development, what I like to do is create a features branch just to make sure that we're following good coding practice. So first thing that we're gonna do is open the site shell. Great, let's change directories into our Divi child theme folder. So that's WP content, and it's in themes, and it's specifically in Divi child. Great. Let's check that that we're on the main branch. I think we are. We are. Perfect. And also, let's run a git pull just to make sure that we're on track with the remote branch. Looks like we're already up to date. Wonderful. All right, clear that up. And now we'll create a new branch using git checkout. New branch. Call this features. And I'll call this Groovy Magic because we're going to add some magical files. Yay. Groovy Magic. Awesome. Switch to a new branch. That's really awesome. Good. So now we're on a new branch. We can start committing our changes there. And I always like to just double check. Yep, we're on features. Groovy Magic is the branch. Great. Let's jump over to VS Code and start developing. Okay, here we are in VS Code inside of our Divi child theme folder. In our previous videos, I showed you how to actually set all this up, so this should be familiar to you. Basically, we have a functions.php file, a style.css file, and some other miscellaneous files in here. What we're going to do is add some JavaScript to this, and I like to keep my code organized. So what I'm going to do is create a new repository called JS. So create this new folder, call it JS. Great. And inside of JS, we'll put all of our JavaScript files. So what I like to do is the name of the client dash whatever the name of the feature is. So in this case, it's our magic feature. So I'm going to call this groovy dash magic.js. Great. And I am going to just run a quick console log just to make sure that this is working. We'll call it groovy magic. Okay, hit save. Let's jump over to our browser to see if this is working or not. So it looks like the page you requested generated server error. It looks like I forgot to actually start the site. So let's fix that error first because it's a 500 error. It's server level. So let's go ahead and fix that. All right, so we'll go ahead and start the site. Let's see if that fixes it. Oh, great. Great. Everything is here. But you'll notice that in my console, I don't have that message that I logged to the console, groovy, right? So let's figure out why. All right, so we know that there's this JS folder in the file. How come the file is not actually loading whenever the page is loading? So the reason for that is because if we go down to our functions.php file, we see that our functions.php file is responsible for actually loading those scripts. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can load the scripts. The one that I prefer is using a main enqueue function and then adding the action and then doing it through there. And inside of that main enqueue function are several other WordPress functions that will call to our scripts. All right. So what we need to do is add a WP enqueue scripts function. And what's nice is I already wrote the documentation for you. So let's grab the code from that documentation, and then I'll explain everything as we go. Okay, here we are in the post. And what I'm going to do is grab this WP enqueue script function and jump back over to VS Code, right? And I want to add in here the function that we've written. Okay, let me quickly walk you through all of this. And in case you're wondering, WordPress has some really, really great documentation for how all this works. So Real quick, let's jump over to the documentation and then I'll explain this. So here we are at developer.wordpress.org. I absolutely love their documentation, and you'll see the name of our function here, as well as several parameters. The parameters are separated by these commas here, and you'll see the parameters down here, which ones are required, as well as their primitive value, be it a string or an array, Boolean, stuff like that. And I always reference this. So don't be ashamed of going to documentation. I'm always reading documentation and just making sure that I'm writing things as they should be. So anyways, it's here for you. I'll link this down in the description in case you want to read more about it. For now, let's jump back over to VS Code, and I'll explain each of these parameters with some code that we've written. All right, going down the line here, the first thing that we see is our handle, Groovy Magic. Now, that's a required parameter, and it should be the name of your function, could be whatever you'd like. Just maybe to help you, something that I like to do is just the name of the client followed by the type of functionality that you're putting in place. So here we have Groovy Magic. And the next thing that we see here, this parameter is our src. Okay, and right now what we're doing is we are concatenating. Sorry, that kind of jumped on us. So we're concatenating. So we're saying get the style sheet directory, which is the current theme, and then append or concatenate the relative path to our script. Okay, so essentially what this is saying, I'll just write it here just so you can see it. Essentially what this is saying is WP content /themes /div child / and then, right, so that's the get style sheet directory, and then it's saying JS / and then the name groovy magic .js. Okay, so that's basically what's happening there in that src parameter. It looks scary, but promise you it's not that bad. Okay, the next thing that we have is a dependency array. Right now it's empty, but when we add jQuery, it will be filled. After that, we have a version. Now, typically with my scripts, I don't include any sort of version. I just add null here. Now you can add a version, especially if you're having some issues with caching and stuff like that. So feel free to, if you need to. I recommend semantic versioning either way. So if you decide to go versioning route, do semantic versioning, which I've talked about in a previous video. Also, the last thing here that we see is a Boolean, and that amounts to true. Basically, I'm just saying, hey, at the end of our body tag, I want you to put the script there. I don't want you to put it in the head of the document. Okay, so let's just make sure that all of this is working properly. I'm going to hit save here, and we're going to head back over to our browser and check the console to see if it shows our console log. Okay, here we are again. Let's hit refresh. Hey, look at that. It says Groovy Magic. It worked. It's magical. So it's that simple to add your JavaScript file. Now, what we'll do from here is actually add a JavaScript library, because what I like to do when I'm developing a Divi child theme is actually use a jQuery library, because it helps me write a little bit less code and keep things pretty consistent with less bloat. So let's jump back over to our code editor and add that. So here we are back in our code editor, and before we continue developing, it will be a good idea for me to start adding some Git commits here. I like to do micro commits, so just making sure that I have a full version history of all the changes I make. So let me pull this up a little bit higher for you, and we're going to run a git status. Let's take a look here. All right, so git status told us that there is a functions.php file that has been modified, and there's a JS directory that has been added. So let's start with functions.php. Okay, and keep this clean for you. Okay, we're going to do git add functions.php, and remember this little trick that I had in our last video basically is just one long script here. So git add functions.php and git commit, and we're going to add this message. And the message will be, I like to be as clear as possible. So we're going to say enqueue. Enqueue is really hard to spell, by the way. We're going to say enqueue And what are we enqueuing here? We are enqueuing Groovy Magic file. No, Groovy Magic JavaScript file. Okay, enqueuing it. Perfect. All right, hit enter. Great. Now it told us, hey, everything looks right. Run and get status one more time. All right, we know that we have to add the JS directory. So in this case, what I'm going to do, let's clear this up. I'm going to hit git add and go, let's see, JS and groovymagic.js. And what I did just there was hit tab, and that there's only one file inside the JS directory, so it just grabbed that one file. All right, and we'll add actually, before we add this, let's not do that just yet, okay? Because it has a console log statement. I don't like to log my console stuff, so let's go in here, delete this, hit save. All right, pull this back up. Okay. Okay, we're gonna hit git add JS and Groovy, and then we're gonna do git commit with a message, and we'll say I like to just say init Groovy Magic JS file. Okay, just initializing it, which is fine. Again, these are micro commits. Yay. Okay, so now we can add some jQuery. Fun. All right, so here's how to do it in WordPress. jQuery can be implemented a few different ways. In WordPress, it runs in compatibility mode, which means that you can't use the typical, you might see like the $ syntax like this. So you can't do that. What you can do, though, is a little trick I learned from Jason Champagne himself. Actually, technically, just his article, which is really great, by the way, and I'll link in the description. Anyways, so in his article, he shows you how to do this, but I'll also show you here on tape. All right, so jQuery, and what we're going to say is, hey, jQuery, talk to the document, and what we want you to do in the document is when the document is ready, when it's fully loaded and safe to add some things to it, we want you to run this particular function. And this particular function will take one parameter, which in our case will be the $, and then we can write all of our jQuery here. Now, conveniently, I have already deleted my console log, so just to make sure that this is running right, jQuery, ? Will it work? Let's see. Let's jump back over to our browser, hit save, jump back over to our browser, and double check. Okay, here we are again. Let's hit refresh. Okay, hit inspect, and let's look at the console. Oh, look at that. jQuery is here. Pretty cool. So let's start adding some jQuery. Okay, so here we are back in the code editor. What I'm going to do is add some comments to help structure this time that we have. So I'm going to say that there is a class called, we'll say groovy-toggle. And what I want to do is when a button with a class called groovy button is pressed, toggle will appear. Toggle class will appear. Okay, so that's basically what we want to create. So let's start right here. Okay, so we know that there's going to be a class called groovy toggle. All right, and we're going to say, so again, when the document is loaded, we want this to be hidden. So I'm going to say dot hide. Great. Okay. Let's start there. Small things at a time. Let's actually, what we're going to do is log into WordPress, and we'll create a page and kind of walk you through all that. Okay, so here we are in our site, and what we're going to do is go over to pages here, And I've already created this draft here. So let's hit edit with Divi. Okay. And we'll just build from scratch because we're brave. And I'll add a text module here, and we'll call this class of Groovy toggle. And then we'll also have a button. So let's add a module here. Okay, why don't we do this? And a button here, and click me. And we'll add a class to this and call it Groovy -button. Okay. And we'll just hit publish for now. All right. So the idea is that this text doesn't appear by default. It only appears when you click this button. Okay. So let's do this. Let's hit exit Visual Builder. Okay, so as you can see, it's already working, right? So let's go to our code editor here. Right, we said Groovy toggle hide. It's doing exactly what we want it to do. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is add some more JavaScript. Sorry. Okay, so we said basically when there's a class called Groovy-button on click, we want to do some sort of action. So in this case, we want to perform a function. This function gets an event parameter. Call it whatever you want. I like to make it as clear to myself as possible. Okay, and inside of here, we want to prevent default. Prevent default, because we want to prevent the default actions that might happen when you click on a button and do a very particular action that we want. All right, so event prevent default, good. And just to make sure, let's see here, we'll say Groovy toggle. Yeah, we'll just do show. Okay, yay. Let's jump back over to the browser and see what happens. Great, I refreshed the page and let's click it. Wow, look at that, okay? Now, it's not doing anything when we click it a second time, so what we can do, let's jump back over, is we can actually do toggle. All right, hit refresh and click. Oh, yeah, it works. It works. Cool. Very good. Before we go any further, let's commit these changes in Git. Go back over here. Let me pull this up for you. And I like to remove my comments whenever I'm pushing my changes, unless they're absolutely necessary. Any console logs or anything like that. If it's just kind of descripting, as you're developing, you don't really need to commit those. Okay, so now what we'll do, let's hit clear and just make sure that git status is catching this. It is. Great. And what we'll do is hit git add, and then we'll add this file, and then we're going to say git commit with this message. What's the message? Let's see. I'll say toggle show with Groovy button. Okay, great. Yay. And then from here, what we can do is git push. Sorry, my bad. Let's clear that up. All right, so we're going to do git branch. See what branch we're on. And then we're going to do git push to origin. And we're going to say push to origin this particular branch. Cool. All right, let me take you through that process. Let's go over to GitHub. Okay, here we are in the Groovy repository on GitHub. Again, you can see that, hey, features, Groovy magic has been pushed. All right, so let's compare and pull request. All right, and we say, okay, we enqueued the JavaScript file, we initialized that file, and we did a toggle show with jQuery. Pretty simple stuff. So we'll just say add a Groovy magic file. Okay, and we'll add this label as a feature. Okay, create the pull request. All right, and then I'm going to merge this pull request, confirm that merge. Wonderful. Okay, and if we go back here to Groovy, we're on the main branch. What you'll see is our JS file is populated for us with everything that we need. And also our functions.php file has our WP enqueue script here, which is great. So now what we need to do on our local branch is switch back to main and pull down those changes. Okay, so what we're gonna do is git checkout main. Yay. All right, so now here we are. And what we need to do is git pull to make sure that because if you'll notice that the changes that we made have disappeared. Oh no, but it's okay, don't worry, never fear, git pull is here, remember? So git pull, and it's gonna pull in, and it's gonna say, hey, we're finding these changes and we're bringing them to you. And now it's here back on your main branch. Again, you're gonna go through that cycle of creating a feature branch, pushing up, and merging it and pulling down those changes, making new branch, and it's just that continual cycle. And just like that, we added JavaScript and jQuery to our WordPress child theme. How cool. I really love how far we've come so far in our WordPress series, and I can't wait to show you even more as we continue. Definitely let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.